Ridley Scott's masterpiece didn't glide effortlessly into pop culture. It erupted, covered in sweat, blood, and behind-the-scenes warfare. The cast didn't just act terrified. They were trapped, misled, and even slimed by surprises they weren't warned about. Effects malfunctioned, tempers flared, and creative visions clashed behind closed doors. So let's tear open the air ducts and crawl into 20 weird facts about Alien that changed science fiction forever. And stick around for the bonus fact, because one of the film's most disturbing secrets wasn't even human. Let's get started, but keep your eyes open. Something's hiding in the shadows. 1. The chest-burster scene was kept secret from the cast. Ridley Scott wanted real fear, not staged, not rehearsed. So, when filming the now iconic chest-burster scene, he deliberately withheld key details from the cast. They knew something was coming, but not the full extent. When the prosthetic alien exploded through Kane's chest, blood erupted violently, spraying the actors, who had no clue how messy it would be. Veronica Cartwright was blindsided. When blood hit her face, she screamed and fell backward. That reaction, 100% real. Scott had hidden the rig beneath a fake chest filled with pressurized blood bags and animal organs. The result? A scene that feels horrifying because it was. Not a performance, a genuine panic, one take, one shot, one nightmare that stayed with the actors for years. It wasn't acting, it was shock therapy on film. 2 H.R. Giger's designs were too disturbing for the studio. When Swiss surrealist H.R. Giger submitted early designs for the Xenomorph, Fox executives were horrified. They didn't mean in a good way. His art was grotesque, biomechanical. One executive reportedly said, "It's disgusting. Get rid of it." But Ridley Scott fought for Giger. He knew this wasn't just a monster, it was evolutionary horror. Giger's designs fused bones, metal, and eroticism. The alien didn't just kill, it penetrated, violated, and reproduced. It was terrifying because it was biologically plausible. Fox relented, but only after Scott threatened to walk. The alien's head was inspired by a distorted human skull. Its body mimicked genitalia and insects. Giger sculpted everything himself, working in near darkness. The result? A monster that didn't just haunt the screen, it rewired sci-fi creature design forever. It wasn't a costume, it was a bio-nightmare made flesh. 3. The Xenomorph was played by a 6'10" art student. Forget animatronics. The alien wasn't CGI, it was Bolaji Badejo, a 26-year-old Nigerian graphic design student with impossibly long limbs. He stood 6'10" with slender arms and a narrow waist, exactly what Ridley Scott wanted, an inhuman silhouette. Discovered at a London pub by casting agent Peter Ardram, Badejo had never acted. He trained for weeks to move like an alien, slow, insect-like, and predatory. They built a latex suit around his body. No zippers, no seams, just skin-tight terror. Badejo appeared in only this film, but his haunting presence helped birth one of cinema's most terrifying creatures. Not an actor, a phantom in the corridors. 4. The ship interior was built using junkyard scraps. The Nostromo wasn't constructed with big-budget sci-fi gloss. Instead, set designer Roger Christian scavenged airplane scrapyards. He gathered rusted valves, circuit boards, discarded medical equipment, and war surplus gear. Everything looked used, grimy, and industrial, not futuristic, but retro tech. That was the goal. Make the future look lived in. The result? A ship that felt more like a floating oil refinery than a clean starship. Crew members constantly brushed against wires, ducked under pipes, and navigated narrow corridors. It wasn't elegant, it was claustrophobic, sweaty, and real. That aesthetic, dubbed used future, changed how sci-fi looked forever. No sterile white walls, just grease, grime, and despair. It wasn't a spaceship, it was a floating death trap. 5. Sigourney Weaver. Wasn't the studio's first choice. Sigourney Weaver is Ripley now, but in 1978 she was an unknown theater actress. Fox wanted Meryl Streep, Others pushed for Veronica Cartwright, but Ridley Scott saw Weaver's commanding stillness and intensity. At her screen test, they lit her dramatically and had her bark orders in an empty set. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She commanded. The executives weren't convinced until they saw dailies. Suddenly, she wasn't a risk. She was the spine of the film. Her height, voice, and gaze gave her authority in a male-dominated cast. What audiences didn't know? That her career and the role of women in science fiction pivoted. On that single performance, she wasn't a final girl. She was a new kind of hero. 6. The sound of the alien egg opening was made with a condom. Creating alien sounds was a DIY nightmare. The egg's eerie hiss, that wet, slithering sound as it opens, it came from Foley artist Derek Leather and a lubricated condom. He inflated it slightly, rubbed it between fingers and lips, and then slowed it down in post-production. Other sounds were just as weird. The facehugger's movement was scrambled intestines. The chest-burster's squeal was baboon screams. Nothing was artificial. Everything came from real organic materials, twisted, mutilated, and distorted beyond recognition. It wasn't sound design. It was audio dissection. 7. The facehugger was made with real animal parts. The facehugger isn't just rubber, it's flesh and bone. For close-ups, the prop department used sheep kidneys, cow stomach lining, and pig tracheas. They stitched these organs into the creature's underbelly to make it pulse and breathe. When it lies on Kane's face, it doesn't just look real, it smells real. The actors recoiled from the stench during filming. The tail was controlled by piano wire, but the rest? Organic horror. It wasn't a puppet. It was biology gone wrong. This fusion of real animal tissue with practical effects made the alien seem tangible, not a creation, an intruder, not special effects, surgical fear. 8. Veronica Cartwright didn't know her character would die. Veronica Cartwright expected to be the lead. After all, she was the bigger name than Sigourney Weaver. But during rewrites, her role was shifted, and she wasn't told. She found out on set that Ripley was the protagonist, and when it came time to shoot Lambert's death scene, she wasn't informed how intense it would be. When the alien cornered her, the strobe lights, steam, and whispers from the crew overwhelmed her. She broke down crying. Unscripted. Ridley Scott kept rolling. Her final screams are real, not performed. It wasn't a death scene. It was a betrayal filmed in real time. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the next 12 facts reveal lawsuits, lost footage, and what Ridley Scott still regrets. 9. The android's milk blood was a filming nightmare. Ash's gruesome android reveal? It wasn't just shocking, it was sticky chaos. When Ian Holmes' character malfunctions and bleeds white fluid, the team used a mix of milk, yogurt, caviar, and onion juice for his synthetic insides. Why? To look biological, but wrong. Cold, creamy, and repulsive. But there was a problem. Under hot set lights, the mixture soured fast. The smell was overwhelming. Holm later said he nearly gagged during multiple takes. The crew even debated switching fluids mid-shoot, but continuity locked them in. To this day, it remains one of the most unpleasant scenes to film, not because of gore, but because of dairy decay. It wasn't high-tech, it was rotten horror with a spoonful of science fiction. 10th Ridley Scott operated the facehugger himself. On Alien, Ridley Scott wasn't just the director, he was the puppeteer of nightmares. In the scene where the facehugger leaps from the egg, the quick burst of movement, that's Scott's gloved hand. He crouched below the table, reached through a slit, and slammed the creature upward, trying to mimic spring-loaded attack behavior. The shot was filmed in reverse to enhance the motion, so what we see is Scott yanking it down, played backward. It wasn't a visual effect, it was hands-on horror, just another example of how Scott physically embedded himself in the film's nightmare fabric. 11. The alien slime was KY jelly, that glistening ooze coating the alien. It's not extraterrestrial, it's personal lubricant. The FX team turned to KY jelly for its slick, light-catching texture. It stayed sticky under hot lights and didn't dry out. They smeared it on the alien suit, the eggs, the facehugger, everything wet and gross. The crew went through bottles of it, often storing them in coolers to keep the viscosity right. The result? A constant sense of moist, pulsing danger. It wasn't just for shock, it made the alien feel alive, like it was constantly excreting fluids, breathing through its skin. Not shiny paint, synthetic secretion. 12. The alien's head was made with real human skull parts. Geiger didn't believe in faking it. The original Xenomorph head was part machine, part human remains. Yes, real skull fragments were embedded in the translucent dome of the creature's head. This wasn't just for shock, it gave the alien anatomical realism. The suggestion of a ghostly face behind the dome made audiences unconsciously uneasy. Geiger even wanted to go further, incorporating dead animal parts into the design, just looking at a monster. They were staring into death repurposed as art. It wasn't science fiction, it was memento mori in latex. 13. Yaphet Kotto refused to talk to Sigourney Weaver off-camera. To build tension, Yaphet Kotto, who played Parker, refused to socialize with Sigourney Weaver. He believed their characters needed friction, so he kept a cold distance from her between takes. Kotto later admitted that avoiding Weaver made it easier to challenge her authority on screen. The tension is palpable. Parker constantly undermines Ripley, questions her leadership, and challenges protocol. But behind the scenes? It was method acting, dialed up to 11. Weaver was confused by his behavior at first, but later admitted it helped her push back harder in scenes. It wasn't just acting, it was psychological warfare in rehearsal. 14. The film had 2 competing scores, and a composer was furious. Composer Jerry Goldsmith delivered a haunting avant-garde score for Alien, but Ridley Scott and editor Terry Rawlings re-edited major sequences and replaced Goldsmith's cues with temp music and other Goldsmith tracks without his approval. Goldsmith was devastated. He called it a betrayal, saying, "That's not the film I scored." Even the now iconic main title theme wasn't what he intended. Scott opted for something more minimalist. The studio stood by Scott's final cut, leaving Goldsmith's intended score mostly unused. Today, some alternate versions of the film include restored music so fans can compare. It wasn't a collaboration, it was a soundtrack standoff. 15th. Giger's workshop was so creepy, cast members refused to visit. Giger didn't just design the alien, he lived inside its world. His workshop in Shepperton Studios was dimly lit, filled with organic sculptures, spines, and twisted erotic art. He played industrial music, wore all black, and rarely spoke. The room smelled of rubber, latex, and decay. Sigourney Weaver once walked in and said it felt like a temple to death. Tom Skerritt avoided it entirely, saying, "That guy's brain scares me." Even the crew joked that if the alien came to life, it would be Geiger himself. It wasn't set design, it was a haunted house from another dimension. 16. The alien was meant to be translucent. Geiger originally envisioned the alien with transparent skin. The idea was to show its inner workings, organs, muscles, even its second jaw visible beneath the surface. They built a prototype suit using clear latex, but under lights it looked silly. You could see the actor's body in seams. Scott scrapped the idea, but kept the ghostly dome on the head as a nod to Giger's original vision. The translucent body was abandoned, but the idea lingered, eventually inspiring designs in Prometheus and later Alien entries. What didn't work in '79 would become tech noir prophecy. 17. The alien doesn't appear. Until the 57th minute, in a film called Alien, you'd expect the creature to appear early. But no, it doesn't show up in full until almost an hour in. Scott deliberately withholds the monster, building unbearable suspense through sound design, lighting, and character tension. This Hitchcockian delay makes its entrance cataclysmic. You're already on edge from the ship's creaks, the facehugger, the paranoia. When the alien finally attacks, you explode with terror. It wasn't lazy pacing, it was masterful orchestration. Scott proved that what you don't see is often more horrifying than what you do. 18. The film was nearly rated X for one scene. The MPAA almost slapped Alien with an X rating because of the chestburster scene. The board found the scene too graphic, too prolonged, and too disturbing. Fox pushed back. Scott trimmed just a few seconds. Blood splatter was slightly reduced, but most of the original footage stayed intact. In the end, the MPAA gave it an R, but warned that it was borderline. Today, it's a staple of horror history. But in 1979, it was considered visceral excess. It wasn't exploitation, it was a physiological assault. 19. The studio nearly demanded a male Ripley. In Dan O'Bannon's original script, Ripley was written gender-neutral. Studio execs assumed the lead would be a man. When Ridley Scott proposed casting a woman, some Fox execs reportedly laughed. But Scott pushed back, hard. He argued a female lead would shock the audience, especially if she was the last survivor. Fox reluctantly agreed. Weaver's screen test sealed the deal. What they didn't expect? That Ripley would become a feminist icon, reshaping how Hollywood viewed female action leads. Not a concession, a revolution. 20. The final scene was almost even darker. The original ending was brutal. In the first draft, Ripley dies. The alien bites her head off, then sits in the captain's chair and mimics her voice to send a transmission to Earth. Fox rejected the idea immediately. They demanded a more hopeful ending. Scott agreed and reshot the finale with Ripley blasting the creature into... It wasn't just survival, it was psychological warfare in space. Bonus fact, a deleted scene reveals the alien's most disturbing trait. In a deleted scene, Ripley finds Dallas and Brett still alive, cocooned, melting into alien eggs. Dallas whispers, "Kill me," as he writhes in agony. The implication? The alien can turn humans into eggs. It doesn't just kill, it reproduces by assimilation. Scott loved the scene, but pacing concerns cut it from the final edit. Still, it changes everything. The alien isn't just a killer, it's a biological factory. It doesn't need a queen, it becomes the queen. What audiences didn't see? A cycle of terror, far worse than death. Alien wasn't just a sci-fi horror flick, it was a slow-motion panic attack, wrapped in industrial metal and drenched in nightmare oil. What would you do if you woke up on the Nostromo? Because in space, no one can hear you comment. Alien wasn't just a sci-fi horror film. It was a claustrophobic descent into primal fear, industrial paranoia, and corporate betrayal.